Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the story of Ruth. It's a short, quiet, but deeply beautiful story about loyalty and redemption. It really goes to show how simple, everyday acts of kindness can shape the future in ways we literally couldn't even imagine. Let's get right into it. So, to set the scene, we've got to start with a really devastating question. What happens when a family loses absolutely everything in a completely foreign land? Well, our story kicks off with a massive famine in Judah. It forces an Israelite family, a guy named Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and their 2 sons, to pack up and move to Moab just to survive. But tragedy strikes. Elimelech dies. The sons eventually marry Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. But then, about 10 years later, both sons pass away too. So now, Naomi is left entirely alone, totally stranded in a foreign country with her 2 widowed daughters-in-law. That brings us to Act 1, Tragedy and Unwavering Loyalty. Hoping just to survive, a grieving Naomi decides to make the trek back to Bethlehem, and she urges her daughters-in-law to stay behind. Now, Orpah tearfully kisses Naomi goodbye, but Ruth? She absolutely refuses to let go. Instead of going back to the safety of her own culture, she makes this incredibly quiet, unwavering pledge. She says, "Entreat me not to leave thee, for whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God." She even follows that up by saying that literally only death will part them. Seeing she is just completely steadfast, Naomi finally stops trying to talk her out of it. So they make this incredibly long journey together, but arriving in Bethlehem is honestly heartbreaking. The whole city is shocked, asking, "Is this Naomi?" But Naomi is just totally shattered by her grief. You see, she left known as Naomi, which means pleasant, going out completely full, but she returns empty. She actually tells the city, "Hey, call me Mara," which literally translates to bitter. She feels like the Almighty has totally stripped her of everything she had. But thankfully, the story doesn't stay in that dark place. We move to Act 2, A Stranger in the Fields, and we finally get this little glimmer of hope as the barley harvest kicks off. Realizing they desperately need food, Ruth just takes the initiative to go glean ears of corn behind anyone who might show her a bit of grace. And, as Providence would have it, she happens to land in a field belonging to a guy named Boaz. Now, Boaz is a mighty man of wealth, but more importantly, he's actually a relative of Naomi's late husband, Elimelech. When Boaz arrives, he immediately notices her, and he doesn't just ignore her. He actively steps up to protect her. He offers her water and makes sure she has a safe place to work. Ruth is just completely overwhelmed. She falls to the ground and asks why she, a total stranger, has found such incredible grace. Boaz simply replies that he's heard all about the amazing kindness she's shown to Naomi. And Boaz goes way above and beyond here. He secretly tells his workers to deliberately drop extra handfuls of barley, strictly on purpose, just for her. Because of this, Ruth ends up taking home about an ephah of barley. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that is almost 30 pounds of grain. That's a massive, life-sustaining amount of food for 2 widows. It's way, way beyond what any normal gleaner could ever hope to gather in a single day. This amazing turn of events leads us right into Act 3, A Midnight Appeal. Seeing Boaz's incredible kindness, Naomi realizes there just might be a path to permanent security for them. Naomi devises this quiet yet super bold plan. She tells Ruth to wash, put on her best clothes, and sneak down to the threshing floor. She's supposed to stay completely hidden until Boaz lies down to sleep. Then, and here's the crazy part, she's to mark the spot, go in softly, uncover his feet, and just wait. Now, these aren't just random weird steps. In their culture, this was a highly recognized, deeply vulnerable appeal for protection and marriage. So picture this. It's midnight, and Boaz wakes up totally startled to find a woman at his feet. Ruth asks him to spread thy skirt over thine handmaid. What she's doing here is legally and morally asking him to step into this ancient role known as the kinsman redeemer. Basically, this was a male relative who was willing to buy back the family land and marry a widow specifically to keep the dead man's family line alive. It was a huge commitment. And that boldly kicks off Act 4, the kinsman redeemer. Boaz is incredibly moved by her virtue and agrees, but he drops a pretty major twist. There's actually someone else, one relative who is closer in kin than he is. Boaz doesn't waste any time. He gathers the city elders at the gate and presents the whole situation. This closer relative initially agrees to buy the land, but he quickly backs out when he realizes he'd also have to marry Ruth. He's worried it'll complicate his own inheritance, you know? So he passes his right over to Boaz, and they seal the deal with this super fascinating ancient practice, the custom of the shoe. A guy would literally take off his shoe and hand it to his neighbor. That was their version of signing a binding legal contract. So, with the shoe officially exchanged and all the elders watching as witnesses, Boaz stands up and makes his declaration. He announces, "Ruth the Moabitess, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance." In one single public moment, Boaz officially secures Naomi's family line and completely brings Ruth out of vulnerability. Which brings us to our final chapter, Act 5, Restoration and Legacy. The woman who returned to Bethlehem completely empty is about to experience overflowing joy. Boaz and Ruth get married, and soon after, she gives birth to a baby boy named Obed. The women of the city completely rally around Naomi, praising the Lord. They declare that this child will be a restorer of her life, and they point out something so beautiful, that Ruth's steadfast love has actually been better to Naomi than 7 sons. Naomi takes the child in her arms, and her emptiness, it's completely, totally healed. But here's the absolute kicker. This quiet little story of a foreign widow's loyalty, it doesn't just restore one family. It literally creates a world-changing lineage. Check this out. Boaz begets Obed. Obed begets Jesse. And Jesse begets David. The steadfast love of a Moabitess, gleaning in a dusty barley field, quietly laid the very foundation for King David himself. I really want to leave you with this final thought to ponder today. How might our smallest, quietest acts of loyalty shape a history that is far bigger than ourselves? In a world that is just obsessed with loud, earth-shattering events, the Book of Ruth reminds us of a really fundamental truth. The deepest, most beautiful redemptions almost always begin with a simple, quiet choice to be kind. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.